Okay, so maybe you heard rumors this morning, but we obviously have a Veterans Day Assembly every year. You can have a seat. Thank you. And we really are privileged to have a young veteran with us. I think a young 96 years old, okay, who fought in World War II, lives in West Hempstead, so those guys in West Hempstead perhaps know him. And I just want a brief introductory remarks about Mr. Rosenblum. First of all, I think that as Jewish Americans, we owe tremendous hakar tov to the people that fight. Number one, because it was American soldiers that fought the Nazis in World War II and enabled anyone who has parents, as myself, or grandparents that survived the Shoah because of the successful battles that American soldiers had, Jewish, non-Jewish, doesn't matter. And they really were risking their own lives to fight another theater, another country, in order to help humanity. And obviously, as Americans, the tremendous debt of gratitude we have for our fighting forces that really enable us to be free, to have Jewish schools, all different religions doing what they want to do, and living freely, even though I'm guessing that Mr. Rosenblum and others aren't excited about people burning the flag or taking the knee or doing other stuff that they may consider to be unpatriotic, but still in all bottom line, they're doing it so this could be a great and free country for everybody. So it's really with great pleasure I introduce Mr. Rosenblum to speak.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi Friedman, for allowing me to address these beautiful, smiling faces. Okay, better? As the rabbi pointed out, my name is Eddie Rosenblum. I'm 96 years old, and I'm trying to put 96 years old in about 25 minutes. So we'll have to do a lot of condensing here. I was born in Vienna, Austria. Since most of you took history lessons, I'm going to give you a short 101 in history. How did I wind up in Vienna? My father, Oliver Scholem, came from a little shtetl in Poland, but it wasn't big enough for him. He needed a bigger town anyhow. He wound up in 1910, he wound up in Vienna. I was born in 1920. If all is well, in 4 years I'll be 100, and you'll be all lawyers, doctors, and Indian chiefs, because the faith, the future of our country is in your hands. As far as the Yiddishkeit goes, a lot of it goes to the rabbi that gives it an inspiration and that motivation to be a somebody. I came to this country in February the 3rd, 1939. Hitler came in, and I'm going to give you a short little history. Sure, that'll condense it. On Tuesday morning, March 12, 1938, I lived across the street from a Sephardic shul, very ornate, the glass dome, mosaic tile. And I used to admire Friday night, the older Balabata went to shul with high hats and frock coats, very normal. You wound up about 6:37 in the morning, with bang, go to the window and I'd look out to the shul, and sure enough it was smoking. The fire department did not respond because at that point you couldn't ask for a fire department or the police department. Hitler wanted an Anschluss. Now, pay a little attention to that. Hitler felt that Germany and Austria ought to be one. They speak the same language, and they only separated by a border guard. Hitler's father was a border guard up in the upper part near Linz, Austria. And while his father was eating lunch, it bothered him. Even though they speak the same language and they almost share the same land, there's a border guard in between. And that thought nudged him throughout his life. So he wanted to connect, he wanted what's called in German Anschluss, to connect the two parties. And at that time, the German government was still in pretty good shape. They went to Bismarck, they went to Hindenburg, they went to the Weimar Republic. And when there was one Kaiser William II, when Hindenburg passed away, Hitler was appointed the Chancellor. And with that in mind, he already concentrated his efforts to combine the two countries. Coming back to Vienna, March 38, his troops were at the border in Czechoslovakia, in the Sudetenland, which later became also Germany, and they came up north from Munich. They came into Vienna in the middle of the night. They went to all the shuls, all the temples. They took out the Sefer Torah scrolls, they put on a stick of dynamite, doused it with gasoline, and they blew it up. That was the beginning of Hitler in Austria. So naturally, the Jews went into hiding because they were picked up, those who were affiliated with the social action. There were some social groups. Of course, they were picked up first. They obviously knew whom to pick up. So, for no reason at all, if 2 or 3 people worked together on the street, they were immediately put into jail. No charges were necessary because they were Jews, period. All education stopped. Any 14, 15, 20-year-old had to be stopped in his education. Doctors couldn't go to hospitals. Lawyers could not practice the law because there was no law. The only law was Hitler and his staff. The Black Shirts, the SS Sturmstaffel, and the Braunschweig Shirts. They ruled the country. So to make a long story short, Bedlam. Bedlam is the word. My relatives who came to this country in the mid-20s, they were naturally all up in arms. We have to get the kids out. We have to do what we can to save their lives. I'll briefly relate 2 little incidents. In the building that we lived in, a very nice, stately building, my father had his tailor shop. In the building, Professor Hahn, he taught my brother Oliver Scholem how to play the violin, and he taught my sisters how to play the piano. And the first day, he's in full uniform, with the hat, same brown belt, and so on. So my mother, in her own way, said, "Here, Professor, how could you wear that uniform?" And no, you're not a Nazi. He said, "Frau Rosenblum, if I don't wear that uniform, I'll be in jail." So a lot of people had to just go along with this new government. There was a man on my floor. His name was Meshuggah Walter. He was a handy guy. He did all little things. He did some painting and repairing and whatnot. And he too, in the first day, in full uniform. But what he did, he stationed himself in front of the building. And as the trucks went by, picking up, looking at the index, who lives? Rosenberg, Rabinowitz, Hershkowitz, and so on. And they were looking, the Nazis were looking whom to pick up. He said, "Raus from here, es sind keine Juden here." Even though he wore a uniform, his heart was not in it to give up the Jews that he lived with. So, a few incidents, I could go on and on. My father was a soldier. My father was in the Austrian army. They loved him. He was a sergeant. Hitler came in. You couldn't go buy food. You couldn't go to Stop and Shop and buy a glass of milk. No food. There was no heating. There was no air conditioning. There was no central heating. So we froze. The first few months wasn't bad, but later on when it came towards the cold weather, I went to sleep frozen. But anyhow, we weathered the storm. My relatives in the United States kept sending an affidavit, which means you need a piece of paper in order to get anyone to get into this country. You need an affidavit where they can supply you with financial support. The papers arrived, and my sister and I, who is 3 years older than I am, we came to this country February the 3rd, 1939. Without language, without money, and just a little suitcase, and a shirt on my back. As I pointed out to the good rabbi before, I didn't want to be the smartest or the richest. I wanted to be a somebody. I saw people driving cars, people. Well, as a tailor, I had a job right away. Didn't make much money. I made $10 a week. But it was a job. I went to school at night. And that went on for a couple of months. We got our own apartment eventually because I couldn't live with my aunt forever. So I'll move you up a little bit to 1941. You all know what happened in December 7th, 1941. I had a job. Life was pretty good. The Japanese invaded our country on Sunday morning of December the 7th. I won't go into details, all the mistakes that we did at that time, but they attacked Pearl Harbor, sunk most of our ships, which is a no-no. In the Navy, you don't park your ships like you park your cars. One should be here, one there. Anyhow, they caught us with our pants down. President Roosevelt at that time made a formal declaration of war to Congress. That's the only way you can start a war. And I'm going to give you at this point, and I'll jump a little ahead. Once a declaration of war, you have to start looking for manpower. So the Selective Service Act was put into action, and everybody in the ages of 18 and 30 had to register for the draft. I was in that age group. At that time I was I was 21 years old. I registered even though I only had made the declaration to become a citizen. In order to become a citizen, it takes 5 years, but while in the military, it only takes 3 years. So I registered for the draft. A few weeks later, I got notice to go down to the Grand Central Station for the physical. Fortunately, I was in good shape. I passed with flying colors. Much to my mom's anger, I had to report back to Camp Upton, New Jersey, which is in Yaphank. It's way out east. And they teach you, they give you a uniform, they put a cap on you, they wear your shoes, they size your boot, and you start marching. The usual. After 3 months of basic training, I went to another basic training up to Charleston, South Carolina, and my citizen papers came through, and then I said to my captain, I have to go down and pick up the paper. I need someone to watch for my character. He said, it will be my pleasure to be with you. Now, you talk about anti-Semitism or certain remarks. I honestly did not, in my 4 years of service, encounter any anti-Jewish feeling. When he came to Yom Tov, we observed as little, as much as we could. They gave us the officer's dining room. That was it. Jumping ahead a little bit, after basic training, we went overseas. The interesting part was the name of the ship that I came to this country. was the Aquitania. It's the name of the ship. Sunday night from Le Havre to New York. Going back on the troop ship to Europe. What was the name of the ship? The Aquitania. Just a coincidence. We were there, Southampton, Liverpool, English Channel. English Channel is a 26-mile body of water between England and France. The invasion was planned on the northern part of Italy, rather the northern part of France, and on Tuesday morning. Now I was there not on Tuesday, but on the second wave about 2 weeks later. We landed, we went aboard ship, into the landing barge. Captain said to us, I want you guys to relax. There's only two things that can happen to you. If you get wounded, the war is over. You go home to a hospital, white sheets, nurses, and you go home. If you get killed, the war is over. You go home, but you go home and relax. So at the age of 22, your brain doesn't work as sharp as it should. So we went out on the field, we walked up the field. I have pictures to show you what it looks like. And I don't know what I had mentioned before or not, I took French in high school. And that French came in handy because we had to negotiate. There were no roadblocks, there were no PBS. So we got aboard trucks, going from St. Lo, Rouen, Caen, St. Mary-Église, heading towards Cherbourg. Several things happened along the way that made life a little interesting. Since I spoke French, I drove one of the trucks, but the rumor had it that German paratroopers jumped behind the line because at that point the Germans took quite a beating and we took a lot of prisoners. So those who spoke English took the uniforms of dead soldiers and they wanted to know direction, what manpower we had, how many weapons we had. I was with a machine gun group. My big buddies, there were three of us. One carried the barrel, one carried the ammo, which is a heavy boxes, two heavy boxes, and I carried a tripod. They always looked out for me. Rosie, you okay? You're too heavy? We manage? We manage. So, flashlight in my face, and we stopped at a roadblock, and the MPD, military police, said to me, who plays first base for the New York Yankees? Which I didn't know, because I wasn't that interested in baseball, and I didn't know whether to answer me in English, or German, or French. I said, I don't know. So the guy whips out a pistol and cocks it and puts it on my chest. He thought I was one of the invaders. So my captain came to my rescue and he said, no, this is one of my men. He showed him my dog tag and showed him that I was a qualified soldier. But my heart kept beating away because they came one bullet close enough to be sent home in a box. So from there we went on to all the little towns, and we took a lot of prisoners. And somewhere along the training line, I injured my arm. And I had very limited movement. And there were a number of prisoners that had to be interrogated. And a few people raised their hand and they said, well, I speak Yiddish. I can ask them. They asked me, wie kommst du, wie machst du, wie gehst du? The prisoners looked at him. They said, I don't understand. I said, Captain, I speak a real German. So they rounded up a few guys, and I said to him, ich bin ein Jude, und Sie müssen mir die Wahrheit sagen, sonst werden Sie sehr bestraft. Sie sind ein Jude? Sie sind der erste Jude, ich habe gesehen. I told them that I'm Jewish. You better tell me the truth, otherwise you'll be severely punished. And he said to me, "You're the first Jew I ever saw. I never saw a Jew before. I thought they looked different." So anyhow, we wanted to know what manpower they had, how many weapons they had, and in what directions they were moving. This was primarily what we wanted. According to the Geneva Convention, all you have to do is give name, rank, and serial number. But they were anxious to get the war over with. They were anxious to go back home to their families. So the guys that I spoke with were not exactly the German high command. But they were good soldiers. We gave them in the Marines. This was the big, and we unloaded all the prisoners. And we put them to work, shining shoes, put in new shoelaces, cleaning uniforms, replace anything that was torn or angled. So we got along. So while we were sitting there recuperating, and my arm was in a sling, the words came up to us that we are moving to the Pacific. The Pacific is still going. And meanwhile, when we wound up in Reims, the armistice was signed. The Russian came from one side, we came from the other. Hitler, it's another story. So, early part of July, we moved down to Marseille. In Marseille, Bastille Day, July 14th, we boarded a ship, the Japara, heading towards the Panama Canal, which separates the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. At that point, now here it is, aboard ship, the war is over. Unconditional surrender, the Japanese gave up. So we surely thought they'll make a U-turn, go back to New York, and the war's over. Not so. We continued on to the canal. We went to the canal, we went to after the canal, we went up to New Guinea. That's the word that escaped me. We went to New Guinea, and from there we wound up in Manila. We spent Manila almost a year, and the war was over. The Philippines were under the jurisdiction of the United States government, and they appointed a overseer, a former governor from the state of Indiana, Paul C. McNutt, and they needed a flag to greet him. And they needed someone to make a flag. Nobody did. They found in the records that there's a tailor there. They called me in. They laid out a flag, blue, red, white, and blue. I made a flag. I got a medal for it. We greeted him, and I'm the Betsy Ross of the Philippines. Unfortunately, I did a couple of bad things. When I got back home, my uniform was full of medals and stripes and stars and whatnot. I donated it to the Jewish war veteran, which was not a good move. I'd love to have that uniform. And of course, the other thing, I had a business in Garden City, and my walls were surrounded by letters and commendations. Unfortunately, in 1973, a truck went into the store and burned up the store with all the letters. I have some. So I came home. I got discharged in 1946. I got married in 47. I met a wonderful, Israel, beautiful, lovely, lovely girl that I had the pleasure to be with for 66 years. She gave me 4 beautiful children. I have grandchildren, I have great-grandchildren. I started a business in Garden City, which is mostly Gentiles, but I was afraid that the name of Rosenblum, it may not fit. So after 40 years, I was part of the town. There wasn't a party I wasn't invited to. There wasn't a Jewish holiday. They didn't bring me, send cards or other things to make my holiday a more pleasant one. So after 40 years, I felt it was time to retire. I had children. I was a scoutmaster for 6 years. I started the Jewish Troop 569, sponsored by Hank. Both my boys are Eagle Scouts. And then I turned over the reins to another man. And I've been with them for the last 57 years. It's been my pleasure to meet the good rabbi, his mishpacha, his children, but not I'm blessed now with a neighbor that is one of his sons. So I could go on and on, give you more details, but it's been a delight. Just point out briefly, I wanted to continue my education. After I retired, I went to Adelphi. I registered. It took me more than over 10 years to get a degree in history. And I still am part of although I know I'm a guest scholar, I lecture, I make speeches here and there, and I'm delighted. So one of the courses that I've been taking for the last couple of years is history, which I enjoy taking. And we talk about pursuing motivation. As I look at you, young men, you are the one that's going to run this country. You're going to want that Yiddishkeit, the continuity that you've been denied. I can go back to the 14th century, to Queen Isabella, when she chased the Jews out of Spain, and on with it, Egypt and other conflicts. So, yet, who persevered? What happened to the Roman Empire? What happened to this and that? They're all gone. You are here. And I always say, I enjoy reading the good books of today. However, looking back in the old, I read Mein Kampf that Hitler wrote in prison. I read Durkheim, I read Plato, but the one that I like most of all is when Abe Lincoln wrote the Gettysburg Address. Under our Constitution, good, better, and different, we just have a new president. He's the one that our Constitution, under our amendments, we have a kind of government that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And may we continue and have the pleasure and good luck to all of us. And thank you so much for listening to me. I could go on.
Okay, we have time for one question. One question, okay. One quick question. I know you're all excited to get back to class. Okay, left shoulder. From West stand, left.
You said that you celebrated holidays with, like the officers let you celebrate holidays with other Jews in the army with you.
Yeah.
So how many Jews were with you when you went overseas?
Not that many. In my company, I think there were 4. There were not that many Jews. Before we went overseas, we had a lot more. When I took my basic training, but in Charleston or in Hampley, Virginia, we used to meet every Friday night at the chapel. And we got together from Intimara. So, quite honestly, overseas the observance was not that plentiful. I just gave schooling my son yesterday. The Jewish Welfare Board gave every soldier a book. And a little Hebrew book, not that big. It had to be all the time. Yeah, in your moments, you say, hey, I need a partner above. And I attribute my longevity to the little partner above me. There must be something about me that he likes. Good question. Good question.
Okay, guys, thank Mr. Roland for coming. Thank you for your service. Mr. North, you can head back to class.